Family, welcome back. We're starting on verse 27. We're in Nissa. Allah doth wish to turn to you, but the wish of those who follow their lusts is that ye should turn away from him, far, far away. Allah doth wish to lighten your difficulties, for man was created weak in flesh. O ye who believe, eat not up your property among yourselves in vanities, but let there be amongst you traffic and trade by mutual goodwill, nor kill or destroy yourselves. For verily Allah hath been to you most merciful. If any do that in rancor and injustice, soon shall we cast them into the fire, and easy it is for Allah. If ye but eschew the most heinous of the things which ye are forbidden to do, we shall expel out of you all the evil in you, and admit you to the gate of great honor. And in no wise covet those things in which Allah hath bestowed his gifts more freely on some of you than others. To men is allotted what they earn, and to women what they earn. But ask Allah of his bounty, for Allah hath full knowledge of all things. To benefit every one we have appointed sharers and heirs to property left by the parents and relatives. To those also to whom your right hand was pledged, give their due portion, for truly Allah is witness to all things. Men are protectors and maintainers of women, because Allah has given the one more strength than the other, and because they support them from their means. Therefore, the righteous women are devotedly obedient and guard in the husband's absence what Allah would have them guard. As to those women on whose part ye fear disloyalty and ill conduct, admonish them first, next refuse to share their beds, and last beat them lightly. But if they return to disobedience, seek not against them means of annoyance, for Allah is most high, great above you all. If ye fear a breach between them twain, appoint two arbiters, one from his family and the other from hers. If they wish for peace, Allah will cause their reconciliation, for Allah hath full knowledge and is acquainted with all things. Serve Allah and join not any partners with him, and do good to parents, kinsfolk, orphans, those in need, neighbors who are near, neighbors who are strangers, the companion by your side, the wayfarer ye meet, and what your right hand possesses, for Allah loveth not the arrogant, the vainglorious, nor those who are miserly, or enjoin in miserliness with others, or hide the bounties which Allah hath bestowed on them. For we have prepared for those who resist faith a punishment that steeps them in contempt. So, when I'm going to use the most charitable interpretation of what it means when a man can lightly beat a woman. So I'm going to give a lot of examples that'll try to make sense with this, okay? So, if you even look on YouTube, alright, and you type in domestic violence against men, you will hear a lot of testimonies about men who endured horrific abuse from women and never put their hand on them, okay? From their wives or girlfriends, booty calls, sanchas, whatever you want to call them, from someone they're involved with, okay? Now, even women on these threads will say, you know what? Those men should have defended themselves because these women were abusing them, scratching them, throwing things at their head, all types of horrific things, right? Now, there's one famous example of in a McDonald's, there was a woman who made a huge scene with a guy because he brought her to McDonald's to do some type of event, like he surprised her or something like that, and she threw the food in his face, she smacked him, she hit him, she screamed, people were staring, and he just stood there taking it all. And in the comments section, women were like, why didn't this guy do something like at least shove her away, right? At least push her off so hard that at least when she gets down, you can get the hell away. So I'm looking at examples like that in a modern context, right? Crazy women exist and we don't talk about it enough, right? I grew up around a lot of domestic violence, and if the woman is just a relaxed, chill, happy woman, of course she doesn't deserve to be hit. But it's not talking about those kind of women, okay? You can take the word obedient to mean somebody who's on your team, like a teammate, right? When you're married to somebody, you're a team. And when that someone is no longer acting as a unit within the team and is constantly trying to attack, as if you're an outsider, that to me is being a disobedient person, because it's going above and beyond the means normal of a husband and wife disputing with each other. Let me give a good example, personal example, and judge it how you want. But I was a kind of a goat in junior high, and I fought a lot with men. Sometimes they deserved it, and sometimes they didn't, okay? But when I hit them, I knew I was going to get hit back, right? Now, how do I put it without sounding kind of weird? When I was being the instigator, right? You're, 14 years old. I was just an angry person, and I grabbed his hoodie. Like, one guy, I grabbed his hoodie, and I was like that. And then if he turns around, it goes like, boom. Like, what do you expect, That's how I look at it. Is when a relationship has gotten, well, we weren't in a relationship, but even in relationships where I was with somebody, there has been physical violence, and there was times where I deserved it and times where I didn't. And when I mean deserve, I mean when you are being so hyper aggressive, right? When you're just in that person's face, that person's going to have a natural instinct to push back. That's what I mean. When you're being a goat, when you're being the ram, right? So if you're being the ram, you're not being obedient. Most people, when you're like, hey man, I don't really like what you're doing, let's just knock it off, you'll be fine. But in this verse 34, it's not talking about just a woman there looking at the stars and then her husband just comes and pummels her to death. No, I think it's talking about when the partner, a female, has gotten so out of control and you've tried every way to kind of, get away from her, and it talks about refusing the bed. There was a news story where a woman used a machete to force her man to have sex. Okay, there is real stories of women forcing sex on others or molesting men. Okay? And the men being like, I don't like it. So a man has a right to defend himself. Okay? I am a hard believer of that. Okay? And people will say I'm a hypocrite, but listen, I've experienced when I watched my dad take beatings from my stepmom. I didn't like that. If my dad, like, in my head, I was like, why doesn't he just smack her? Like, get off my dad. Like, but I had to sit there and watch it, right? And she was crazy. But then I watched my mom fight my stepdad, and because he was trying to abuse her, and I was like, this is not right. I just want to get in there and defend my dad and my mom, like, against my stepdad, I mean. So I've seen all expressions of domestic violence. This does not mean it's okay. Okay? And I myself was a rambunctious girl who sparred with guys, who would box guys. We'd put on gloves, and we would pummel the living hell out of each other to get good fighting practice, because not all the girls were into that, so I always had to go to the boys for practice. My sparring partners, most of them were men. Now, that's different because they're signing up for it, right? But what I'm saying is, in philosophy, we have a term of, like, the most charitable interpretation. The principle of charity, it's called. And so many people will want to jump on that verse and then say, well, that one verse means that there is no truth found without the Qur'an. I don't agree with that interpretation. Okay, like I've given you modern examples. Okay, there are plenty of news stories showing women being abusive to men. I've seen and I've read articles also, and seen videos and news stories and such about women who they wanted to be abusive to their man, so they tortured that guy's dog. Now, some wives would do that, right? Now, if that woman is torturing that guy's dog, and he decides to, like, what the heck? And he just, boom, 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 like something happens, he has a right to physically assault her to get him off the dog. I've seen stories where women were mean to their own children because their husband cheated, right? Or they were looking at pornography or something like that. It's almost like a classic Medea tale, that ancient Greek story, right? So we have to remember these extreme examples of when women are abusing men and then the men have to do something in recourse. Because if I had a brother, I don't know how long I could hold out watching his wife mentally abuse him or physically abuse him, right? There's going to be a point where I'm going to get in there to help my brothers. I got several brothers, right? And they're very handsome, and I hope that they get very good ladies, but if they don't, right? Man, like, I'm not going to be into that. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, if you have to think about this in so many different contexts, right? If you had a son whose wife was abusing him, if you had a brother, an uncle, or like me and watching my father, right? There's these conflictions. No relationship should have violence. Duh. But this isn't talking about healthy relationships. I think this is talking about when things get out of the norm. Okay? And if you think women can't be violent, you just get your fingers on Google, man. You got a smartphone. You can go in and look and see the countless stories. Okay? That doesn't mean it should be done at all. Like, as in all the time, right? As the only recourse someone has. But it clearly says here, like, you know, if ye fear disloyalty, like disloyalty to the marriage, they're not acting like the unit, like on a team, right? They're being the antagonist. They're not really being who you were when you met them, right? So I've personally lived and seen so many different examples of men abuse and women abuse. And this is talking about when there's ill conduct, when there's disloyalty, when you've tried to refuse the bed and then that hasn't worked. And then it even says after that, you still gotta try. I mean, you guys gotta, like, not try to harp on one verse, because I can find one verse in any holy text and, you know, try to manipulate it to where it sounds worse than what it actually is, okay? And you have to give the principle of charity. You have to do the academic thing and use the principle of charity. Remember the context and the time period of when this was written, but also think about now, right? If you're a man, there comes a point where you won't take abuse, and there's different types of abuse, like I've said, okay? And that's how I'm going to interpret it. You can disagree. You can say I'm sugarcoating it. I'm overlooking it. But honestly, anyone with 2 brain cells who reads the verse, who isn't being an atheistic or a far right extremist, will realize it's saying when things are not right in the home, okay? And just because it doesn't explicitly say after your wife has beaten you 70 times, you have to then respond. No, you should really think about the different ways these things can be versed, right? And try to pull yourself out of it, okay? Stop imagining in your head the woman who is baking a cake and her husband comes home and bashes her over the head with a wine bottle. No. Think about the woman who is upset because you bought the wrong thing, right? You were looking at some girl's butt, right? I've seen girls go crazy on their men in public with zero shame. Zero shame. You can see that constantly in the bars, right? I don't go to the places anymore, but back in the day, you can see it, right? They're like, who you looking at? You looking at her? Smack! You looking at her? Smack! And then toss a drink in the face, right? And then they push their bar stool down. I mean, come on. Come on. Like, have 2 brain cells. Come on. So that's how I'm going to interpret it. I would love to know what you guys think. And, you know, let's look at this in an academic way, okay? I don't want any racist, bigoted stuff. Let's really look at this and consider the different ways this could be applied and let's use the principle of charity. Okay, let's not play these funny games where we're acting like it's talking about just someone sitting there and then you can just beat them. Okay, but either way, it's still a very interesting section. And now certain feminists will say, well, this is misogynist because it's saying that men are the protectors of women, right? Well, number one, men are stronger than women, and this is a good example of when men who go trans, like men who turn into women to compete in female competitions, crush all the previous female records. Now, this is not to say that female bodybuilders couldn't beat up a skateboarder guy. Okay, this isn't to say Holly Holm, Ronda Rousey, Misha Tate wouldn't just savagely destroy many men, right? So, but I think this has taken the beautiful expression. Me personally, I've had a guy, and I once had an ex-boyfriend who was a big wimp, and there was a drunk guy in a bar who kept harassing us, and we were waiting outside, hanging out. It was nighttime, and it was outside in the street, and he was talking, and I had to be the one who said, like, get away from us, go on, get the heck out of here, you're drunk, go home. And my guy was just standing there like, ugh. And it was such an unattractive feeling where I felt like I can't, even if you lose, you should still try. You know what I mean? Even you got to go down fighting. You got to poke out some eyeballs. You got to eat an ear off. You got to do something, right? But he just completely cowered. And I get it. Some people panic when they freeze up, right? I understand. But when you're the woman and you got to do the work of the man for self-defense, it's a problem, right? It can feel really weird, right? Because when you're both being attacked, both of you should act as a unit against the aggressor, but one falls back, right? So let's not pretend that men historically haven't been the defenders of the women and children. And I don't see anything wrong with that. That doesn't mean we become like this. Women aren't just supposed to be like, oh, let the men do everything. No, because it says right here, they should guard in the husband's absence, right? To be a guard is literally to be ready to defend. And to be ready to defend means that we're ready to defend, Now, that can mean guard my man's car. That can mean guard my man's home. That can mean guard my man's children. That can mean guard my man's property. Anything really, right? You're guarding what is shared in the relationship, right? For example, if someone's trying to carjack you and your man isn't there, his car, you both have a car in the same name, right? Both your names are on the car, and you got your kids in the back, you got your gear, your sporting gear in the back, and someone's trying to carjack you, and you can defend yourself because you have a concealed carry, and you just go pop, pop, and you defend yourself. That's guarding, right? That's guarding. Because if you're the wife, you're not the property, but you are the teammate of the man, right? And you're protecting your family's car, right? And you're protecting the children, which are part of the family unit when you get married or when you're in a relationship. So having the duty of guardianship over the possessions within the relationship is not negative. I don't see that as negative, right? And it's true that, there are some women who are stronger than other men, and men who are stronger than women. I mean, and seriously, let's not manipulate the verse to make it so out of control, okay? Because I'm going to call it out like I see it right now. I'll have plenty of my Christian friends who will say, oh, we can't like the Quran because this verse. But then there'll be a gay Christian and they'll say, well, we'll just overlook the gay part in the Bible, which, you know what, I have no problem with that. So, but let's be consistent is what I'm trying to point out. If you're going to cherry pick in the Bible, don't get mad if people don't interpret this verse in the most negative light. That's what I'm going to say. And I think anyone with 2 brain cells who wants to be an academic person who's trying to be honest, can really see how this could be used in a different way, right? Just because it isn't laid out, spoon-fed to you on what this means, doesn't mean you can't use your brain and analyze what it means, okay? So that's my rant about that, but we're going to continue our reading. And what do you think, family? I want to know what you think.